Hello everybody and welcome to today's tour. My name is Isabella and I am a travel designer and part-time tour guide at Locally Private Experiences. We're a tour company for people that don't like tours, and today I will be taking you virtually from the comfort of your own home around Melbourne's sporting precinct. I'm now at the MCG, the pinnacle, I guess, of sport in Melbourne. It's a magnificent stadium, and luckily the fog is starting to lift a tiny bit so you can see a little bit more of it than when I first arrived this morning. Now I'm going to wait a couple of minutes so that you can go and grab a cup of tea, get all cozy and snuggly, because it is certainly about, I think it's about 5 degrees right now for me, so I'm putting my body on the line for you guys, but sorry, I had to say that sporting one for you today. Now today the plan is I'm going to take you through the MCG. Well, not quite through it. We unfortunately can't go inside as of course the state of the world won't quite allow it at the moment. I'll take you around Melbourne Park where the tennis is played, the Australian Open, and we'll see a bunch of other sporting icons around Melbourne. Now to start off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now to get started, we are at the MCG in front of the MCC. So the MCC is the Melbourne Cricket Club, and they have been around since 1838, so a very, very long time. It's probably one of the most prestigious clubs if you're from Melbourne. I think the wait time at the moment takes about 20 years on the waiting list. So I know one child that was born a couple of months ago, his name's Noah, he's Chris's son, and it's tipped that he might have to wait 25 years till he can become a member. That is how prestigious it is. I'm just walking past now the MCC. So the MCC are stationed here at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and the ground itself has been around since 1853. That was when it was first built, so you can imagine it doesn't quite look the same today as it did all those years ago. A lot's changed since then. A lot of pretty amazing things have occurred at this place, the hallowed turf, as a lot of Melburnians like to call it. Now to the other side of me, we're at the gorgeous Yarra Park, and I usually see the Yarra Park as a car park. Actually, it's usually full of cars when there's packed events on here at the G. Now sadly we don't have any packed events at the G as of late. In fact, the most recent one where crowds were allowed was the World Cup final, the Women's World Cup final, the cricketing match between India and Australia. Now Australia did win that match. I think they won by about 75 runs, which was pretty good, and I was one of the record-breaking crowd. We had 86,174 people here, which is the most high attended sporting match, women's sporting match in Australian history. So that was pretty cool to be a part of, and that was just on the 8th of March this year, so not all that long ago when you really think about it. Walking over now to the Olympic plaque. Now I'll talk a little bit about the Olympic Games a bit later. Just going to do some backwards walking so you can check it out. Now if you ever get to come to Melbourne, you've got to come and check out all the Olympic champions from when Melbourne hosted the Games in 1956. I'm just going to get a little bit closer for you so you can see those rings right there at the top. So 1956, what's that, 64 years ago since the games were played here, and as a Melburnian and a sports lover, I'd obviously love if they could be played here one day again. But it was a pretty special time all those years ago, and plenty of amazing sporting achievements from players of all different, a range of sports have been played here. I'm wandering over now to the bronze statue of one Betty Cuthbert. Now she was the golden girl of those Olympics for Australia. She was quite young. I think she was only 18 years of age at the time, and she became the sprinting champion. She won the 100, the 200 and the relay in the sprints. I'm just gonna let you have a look at her. A pretty amazing sportswoman of her time, and rightly so that she's emblazoned here in bronze. Pretty fantastic. She went on to win a 4th gold, I just learned as I read that, in Tokyo in 1964. Now I don't know about you, but I'm certainly looking forward to the next time Tokyo hosts the Olympics. Hopefully that'll be next year, if all things go to plan. Now I'm wandering around now to the next part of the MCG, which is the Australian Sports Museum. It replaced the National Sports Museum, which used to be here. And I was actually lucky enough to attend the open day just before this place opened in late Feb this year. And if you get a chance to come to Melbourne, you really have to go and check it out. It had so many cool interactive activities, things that you could do. You could try to kick a footy, shoot hoops, all that kind of stuff. It was seriously cool. So if you get to come to Melbourne, make sure you check that out. Now, if you're just tuning in, my name is Isabella. I'm from Local Private Experiences. We're a tour company for people that don't like tours. And today I'll be taking you around Melbourne's sporting precinct. At the moment, we are heading around the MCG, which is right behind me now. And to the other side, we've got Yarra Park. Now, one really interesting thing I learned not all that long ago actually about the MCG in Yarra Park is that when football was sort of first created and first started being played, the cricketers did not like that the ground was getting ruined, as they said, between their cricket seasons when the footy players came and stomped all over it here at the hallowed turf. And so they kicked them out and forced them to play out there in Yarra Park. Of course, we already had some stands set up here at the MCG overlooking the cricket ground inside there. So what they did is that they made those stands reversible so that during the summer it was facing into the cricket ground, and in the winter they flipped it around and you could watch the football that was being played at Yarra Park. And that was, I think, about 100 years ago that was taking place. So I think that's pretty cool that they had the technology to be able to do that way back then. Now, there's not many people around here at the moment. Of course, everyone's staying socially distanced, which is fantastic to see. But I tell you what, I cannot wait till I can be back here with a huge crowd of people again, watching my favourite sporting team. I go for the Essendon Bombers. They haven't been too successful as of late, but maybe 2020 will be our year. Maybe 2021, we'll have to see. Just going past another bronze statue now. That was Ron Barassi, a Carlton great. And in fact, I'm not sure if this is going to work on the camera, but I'll just take you through here. You can see right through the goalposts, maybe not through there into the G. Now, if you don't know much about Aussie rules, well, I suggest you Google it and have a look. It is, in my humble opinion, one of the best sports in the world. It was created by a guy named Tom Wills. We actually passed a statue of him not all that long ago. And he wanted to create a game that would, or a competition that would ensure that his cricketing mates stayed fit during the winter instead of going to the pub and drinking too many beers because he was sick of them coming back unfit. So he'd spent a bit of time in England playing rugby, and came back and decided that, you know, there was already sort of different codes of football being played, but they weren't necessarily set competitions. So he wrote up a set of rules and sent it through to the newspaper and demanded that there be a game competition set up. And so the first football club was Melbourne Football Club, and then later on Geelong Football Club. So they were the first two. Now, if you don't know much about Victoria, Geelong is about an hour out of Melbourne. So those two played against each other, and then not long afterwards, other big clubs were created, and they initially played in the VFL, the Victorian Football League, and now they play in the AFL, which Well, it's not on at the moment, but it is set to return in the not too distant future, I believe. They've actually set out the fixture for the first couple of games. Coming up now to a statue of Sir Donald Bradman. Now, if you know much about cricket, you'll certainly know this name. He is the Don of cricket. He is said to be the best cricket batsman to exist, and his record average of 99.94 is certainly a pretty spectacular one. Now, my favourite story about Donald Bradman is that he would practice keeping his iron with a cricket stump and a golf ball. So he'd be tapping away. So he had the best eye in the game, and that's why he could score so many runs. And he certainly loved playing at the MCG. I think while his average was 99.94 across his test match career, at the MCG it was well over 100. He absolutely loved this ground. And in fact, if you enter through this gate, it's called the Don Bradman Gate. It's going to continue around now. Seen a couple of people out here, which is nice to see. Hopefully the sun will come out. We can get a little bit of sun so you can really see spectacular Melbourne in all its glory. We keep walking past Yarra Park. It is quite stunning actually when the sunshine hits those autumn leaves. It's probably one of my favourite sections of Melbourne, heading around the G. The MCG has also been host to plenty of other sports. Back in 1956, this is where the athletics track was in the Olympics. It's also been host to plenty of soccer games, of course cricket games. Every year it hosts the Boxing Day Test, which is a test match played, no points for guessing, on Boxing Day between Australia and the touring cricket side. So last year it was against New Zealand. I think before that it was against India, and the year before that it was against England in the Ashes. The Ashes is, I guess, the pinnacle of Test cricket. Well, as an Australian or an Englishman, you'd say that it's the pinnacle. It's Test matches played between Australia and England, and the story of how the Ashes began is quite an interesting one actually. It was back in 1882. There was a tour, Australia toured England, and they beat them for the first time. They beat the motherland, I guess, and there was a mock obituary written up by one of the English sports journalists at the time. And of course this was a terrible day for English cricket, the day that the Australians beat them for the first time, and so he wrote, the body, talked about England cricket as the body will be cremated and taken to Australia, and the Ashes taken to Australia. And so we're going back to 1882 when this happened, and not long afterwards the English team toured Australia, and there were some pretty funny ladies from Melbourne who'd heard about that story, and they were present when the English team then played against Australia. And so, well, the story goes is that they took one of the bales after one of the games, they burnt it and put it in a little perfume bottle, and a lady named Lady Janet Clark presented it to the English captain, Ivo Bligh, at the time, and said that, you know, England could take their Ashes back. Now, there's some speculation as to how true that story is, but I think it's quite a good one, and my favourite part of it is that not only was it Lady Clark by herself, but also one of her friends, Florence Morphy, was there, and Florence actually ended up marrying Ivo Bligh. So a bit of a love story that began the Ashes, and then after that we've played tests between Australia and England ever since for the prized Ashes. At the moment, Australia has got them. You're a cricket fan, of course you'll know that we managed to retain them last year on the English tour, which was pretty fantastic. So there you go. I'm not sure how much of the MCG you can see now, but it's a pretty spectacular stadium. Here, the trains going under us at the moment, but we're quite lucky that there's not too many people around here at the moment as we head over the bridge, over the rail lines to Melbourne Park. I'm just going to give you a little 360 of where we are at the moment. That is Melbourne Arena behind me. Now, if you're just tuning in, my name's Isabella. I'm from Locally Private Experiences. We're a tour company for people that don't like tours. And today I'm taking you on a little virtual run around of Melbourne's sporting precinct. Now, we are entering Melbourne Park. Tennis fans will have heard of Melbourne Park. It is where the Australian Open is played in January every year. It's the first of the Grand Slams. And we'll head over a little bit later to Rod Laver Arena, where centre court is and where the finals are played. I'm not sure if you can hear those birds, but they're very loud here at the moment. So heading through, go past Melbourne Arena. And the Melbourne Arena is home to Melbourne's basketball team, Melbourne United. We'll just have a look over here as we walk past. So a lot of basketball is played here. Play a few other sports here. They'll probably play some netball games as well. And plenty of concerts also take place here at Melbourne Arena and also at Rod Laver, which we might get to a little bit later. Now I'm heading across. I'm going to give you a look at Amy Park from a distance. As we head over towards Amy Park, I'm not sure if you could see it from a distance, but when we get a little bit closer, I'll give you another look. Amy Park is called the Bubble Dome by some people in Melbourne because it looks like it's made of bubbles. It's pretty cool. Maybe you can see a little bit better now as we head towards it. And it is home to our soccer and rugby teams. So we are going to head across Olympic Boulevard. Olympic Boulevard is quite a major road in Melbourne. Just going to walk up a couple of steps so we can cross yet another bridge. Have a sneaky look at some of the practice courts that the tennis stars play on during the Australian Open. So it's the same sort of surface as you'll find at Rod Laver and Margaret Court, Hisense Arena, those type of places. So it's where the pros will practice and also maybe where some of the amateurs are practicing at the moment. So crossing over as the sun finally starts to show itself, which is good. I'm warming up a little bit. Hopefully you're staying nice and cozy wherever you are. Now, if you're enjoying the tour and want to learn more about Locally, you can head to our website, locallytours.com. Now, we did get some fantastic news this week that as of June the 1st, intrastate travel will be allowed. So if you're in Victoria and you want to do a tour with us, or you just need some help planning one of your next trips, maybe European holidays being cancelled this year and you need something exciting and cool to replace it with, well, give us a call, because we seriously sit around daydreaming of the awesome things that we can take you guys to in our home city and state. We don't just stick to Melbourne. We go out to our regional areas like the Mornington Peninsula, the Great Ocean Road, Yarra Valley for some delicious wine, and a whole lot more. So head over to our website and we'll see what we can do for you. Now we're a little bit closer to Amy Park. Now have another guess what it's actually supposed to depict. It's a bunch of soccer balls. I'll walk backwards so you can see a little bit more. So unfortunately I don't know who the architect was, but I think they've done a pretty amazing job. It again is home to our soccer and our rugby teams. The soccer teams being Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City, and our rugby team, our rugby league team, Melbourne Storm, and our rugby union side, the Melbourne Rebels. So they all play here at the Bubble Dome or Amy Park. Now I'm going to head back downstairs as we've crossed over Olympic Boulevard. Got some athletes doing some training here. Of course, sport is hopefully going to be back on quite soon, so making sure they keep fit. We're going to head towards the left along Olympic Boulevard. Might be able to hear some music from them, pumping the tunes nice and early, which is good. I think they must be basketball players doing some basketball drills behind me, which is quite cool. Alright, I'm going to quickly cross the road. Not too many cars around today, which makes it nice and easy. Now you might be able to see the Olympic rings on Olympic Boulevard here as I cross over. Up on the bridge there, the Olympic rings, and of course they were put there because we hosted the 1956 Olympics. Now those Olympics not only changed Melbourne, but some also say that they really brought the Olympics to the world. Now I apologise if it's a little bit loud here. I am on a main road. We're just walking past another bronze statue. Let you have a little look at it. They're of two men, John Landy, in fact John Landy and Ron Clark, and the plaque says sportsmanship. I'm not sure if you can quite see it, but it was the statue of one guy helping another one up, and it was John Landy, and he was helping up a young Ron Clark, and it happened just here at Olympic Park back in '56. It wasn't during the Olympics, it was during the Australian Mile Championships that were held not long before the Olympics. And as the two were racing, just in the mile race, it's not too long, in the mile race, Ron Clark fell over, clipped Landy's ankles and fell over. And in such a short race, you'd think that, oh, I'm losing my scarf, you'd think that someone wouldn't have the time to stop and help out a mate, but it's exactly what John Landy did. He turned around, picked up his mate, and actually went on to power past the field, and he won that race. So he's one of the all-time greats of Australian athletics. And Ron Clark, well, it was a big year for him because he actually was the cauldron lighter. He lit the cauldron with the Olympic torch in the Olympics that year. The Olympics started on the 22nd of November, and the opening ceremony was of course held at the MCG, and it wasn't entirely smooth, I guess, because Ron Clark, when he went to light the cauldron, it actually dripped on him and he got quite burnt. So probably not one of the best stories to come out of the Olympics, but certainly a big moment for Ron Clark. Now, might not be my favourite story of the Olympic torch relay that year, because my favourite mile that was run with the Olympic torch was the mile from 5 miles out of Ballarat to 4 miles out of Ballarat. And the torch had to go out to Ballarat because that's where the rowing and canoeing events were held. Now the reason I like that mile the best is because it was run by a guy named John Hassel, and John Hassel is my grandfather. So bit of Hassel history that connects me to the torch relay and to the 1956 Olympics here in Melbourne. So pretty special to think about, and I know that he raced against John Landy and Ron Clark, and unfortunately there's no bronze statue of him around Melbourne, but still quite a special thing for for our family, I guess, to remember. Now, the other pretty amazing thing about the 1956 Olympics was, as we walked towards the Holden Centre, which at the time was the swimming centre. It's where the aquatics were held during the 56 Olympics, was that from the opening ceremony to the closing ceremony, the closing ceremony actually started a bit of a revolution, a bit of a change in the Olympics. Now, prior to that, there was a bit of controversy, I guess, around the Melbourne Olympics. There was an issue that actually took place here at the Aquatic Centre between Hungary and the Soviet Union, what's called the bloodiest game of the Olympics. It took place here in the water polo. At the time, it was at the time of the Hungarian Revolution, so there was not just water polo fights, I guess. It was on the backdrop of a much bigger political issue between Hungary and the Soviet Union. So there's a bit of a bloodbath here during the semi-finals of the water polo. But after that, you know, there was, I guess, a bit of talk from people around Melbourne of how they could redeem these Olympics and turn them back into the friendly Olympics that Australia, you know, really wanted them to be, and thought that they would be, because, you know, we like to think of ourselves as a pretty larrikin friendly nation, I guess. I'm walking past the Holden Centre now, which is home to the Collingwood Football Club. So there was a young guy, I think he was just 16, 17 years old, named John Ian Wing. And he was a schoolboy, and he wrote a letter to the Australian Olympic Committee. And he suggested to them that in the closing ceremony, instead of keeping the teams all separate, the countries all separate as different nations, why don't they get together and all, just having people beep me, and all walk in as one nation. And he wrote this letter. I believe there was a quote in it that said, "War, politics and nationality will all be forgotten." And the Olympic organisers loved that idea. And so they did it back over at the MCG. And it has changed the way that the Olympics are run, getting plenty of beeps. I guess it's a bit odd to see someone walking with a selfie stick at this time of day. Yeah, so it changed the way that the Olympics were run. It made it much more of that sort of unifying event that they wanted it to be. And every year since then, we've seen that practice carried out by the host nation and all the nations that join together to compete in the Olympics. They walk out separately for the opening ceremony and then come together as one for the closing. We're gonna have to wait a little bit here at the lights before we cross over. In fact, I might get green light here now. I should do it with my elbow, keeping safe. Here, got the Yarra River, and you might be able to see a little bit of blue sky now finally coming through. It is set to be a gorgeous day here in Melbourne. Just a little bit of a cold start this morning. Now, another Olympic story. I know I sort of been banging on about these 56 Olympics, but they really did change the shape of Melbourne. I spoke about the Hungarian team before, the polo players. Well, a lot of the Hungarian team actually ended up migrating to Australia after those Olympics. Of course, they'd come that they travel with. You know, you tend to think of doctors, physios, osteos, dietitians, maybe sports psychologists, those kind of people. But back in 56, the Italians thought that it would be necessary for them to bring pastry chefs. So alongside potentially their doctors and their athletes, they brought some pastry chefs as they start to cross the road. And they did that because, well, what they knew about Melbourne, what they knew about Australia, was really just that we were a convict nation settled by the English, and they were worried that our food wouldn't quite be up to scratch, up to their European standard. So they sent out all these chefs, and along with the chefs, they brought with them a lot of espresso machines. Now, if you've been to Melbourne before, you would probably know that we really like our coffee here. We're sort of connoisseurs of coffee, I guess, and of food in general. And I do hope that one day you get to come here and experience it for yourself. But that all started back in '56 because of all these wonderful pastry chefs that came over with their espresso machines, and people around Melbourne were lining up for hours to try out this delicious new coffee fresh from Europe. And again, a lot of them stayed. A lot of them stayed and set up what we know as Little Italy today in Carlton. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can check out further back on the feed. Dan did a tour of Carlton and he'll tell you a little bit more. But they certainly set up some pretty awesome places, and I, for one, am certainly grateful for the influence that the Italians have had on us here in Melbourne. Now, I'm very glad that it's nice and blue skies now for you. You might be able to see there the Eureka Tower, tallest building in the Southern Hemisphere, in Australia at least. Now, one of the people that did stay here, did migrate, was a guy named Giorgio Angele. And well, the story goes is that he was here as a pastry chef for the Olympic team. He met a girl named Julie, fell in love, and he was just 23 years of age at the time, but decided that he would move to Australia to be with Julie. And of course, he'd been trained in Italy as a pastry chef, and so he was in high demand here, and he set up a shop in Kew selling delicious baked goods, and then eventually moved into Carlton and set up what we know now as Brunetti's, which is a bit of an institution of Melbourne food, and particularly Melbourne pastries. Definitely one that I liked to head to. There are such delicious little treats there, so if you do get to come to Melbourne, definitely try out Brunetti's. I think now that they've actually expanded internationally, you might be able to find a shop in Singapore of Brunetti's. Now, I found another bronze statue. This is one Rod Laver, and we are of course outside Rod Laver Arena. Rod Laver Arena is where you'll watch the Australian Open finals. A lot of the other big matches are always played here as well. It's centre court for the Open here in January. Now, this year the winners were Novak Djokovic in the men and Sofia Kenin in the women, and they had brilliant tournaments, of course, but there's always so much to see and do here at the Open. We might not get quite all the way around to it, but there's always lots of live music that's played here, and that's probably my favourite thing about the Australian Open. Of course, I love the tennis, I love watching on TV, I love getting a ground pass and coming and seeing all the smaller matches on the outside courts. But when you get one of those tickets, you also get to see every night of the Open. There is an awesome lineup out at the AO Live stage, which is the reason I love to be a Melburnian in January. Just saw a little buggy go past. I must look a little bit odd to people that are not quite sure what I'm doing, but here we are at Rod Laver Arena. So if you do get to come to Melbourne, I would definitely suggest coming here in January. The weather is beautiful, the Australian Open is on, you can watch all the tennis, and you can see so many awesome live, mostly Australian acts, which I think is pretty spectacular. Well, speaking of live music, Rod Laver Arena is where you'll find a whole lot of live concerts. The big sellout ones are usually here at Rod Laver. It's actually where I saw my first concert. I watched Pink here back in 2009, I think, and It was awesome. The arena was built in 1988, and the first game played here was the Australian Open, the first match of the Australian Open, and it's been here ever since. We're very lucky here in Melbourne to host one of the Grand Slams, and Rod Laver, the bronze guy over there, he is the only person in the world to have won 2 Grand Slams. I think it was in 1963 and 69, maybe 62 and 69. He won the Grand Slam, so all 4 tournaments of the calendar year. So a very, very impressive man, and the arena is rightly so to be named after him. Now heading onto the oval now. And looks like I might actually be running out of time as the sun has finally come out. We are gonna just have another little look at the Holden Centre. Sorry for squinting. I wish the sun here, and I don't want to wish it away. Over there you can see the Eureka Tower, the Arts Centre, as well as that little Eiffel Tower looking building out there. And on the other side is the Melbourne Arena. So I'll give you a little 360 of this awesome sports precinct of Melbourne. Now I hope that you've enjoyed the tour today. I've certainly enjoyed being out here, being back in these stadiums that I guess we haven't got to venture to too often lately. But I do really hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that we can get you out here either to Melbourne or to one of our other touring regions soon. It's been a strange couple of months for us in the tourism industry, but we have really if you want to give a review, that kind of thing is always really helpful. Now I am going to sign off, and again say a big thank you to you for joining me at home. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you again.